Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching a brand new edition of India Votes 2019 with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday referred to Mission Shakti a day after India shot down a live satellite in space at an election rally in Uttar Pradesh's Meerut to assert that he has led a decisive government at the centre in the last 5 years. He also attacked the opposition parties for seeking clarification from the government over the strike by the Indian Air Force at Balakot in Pakistan. At his Meerut rally, Prime Minister Modi said he will present his government's report card in the coming days while fixing accountability of the rival parties. As electioneering hots up, we will analyze the key issues in the lead-up to the general elections in today's Bharat Bhagya Vidhata. Prime Minister Narendra Modi began the BJP's campaign for the Lok Sabha polls in Uttar Pradesh today with a blistering attack on the opposition, even as he kept a strong focus on his government's achievements, setting his party's agenda for the 2019 poll campaign. The Prime Minister began his address saying the upcoming general elections are about the people's dreams, aspirations and expectations. He referred to himself as a nation's chowkidar, adding that he will bring justice and development to all, even as others have no policy or vision. The Prime Minister also took a swipe at the Congress party's Nyay scheme, saying people who couldn't open bank accounts are now saying that they will directly transfer money to the poor. The Prime Minister said India has made up its mind and 130 crore Indians have already decided who will return to power in 2019.
आजादी के बाद पिछले 72 वर्षों में कांग्रेस ने जीता, गरीबों के साथ गद्दारी की है। उसे देखते हुए आज देश का गरीब ये संकल्प कर चुका है कि कांग्रेस हटाओ, गरीबी अपने आप हट जाएगी। गरीबी तब हटेगी जब कांग्रेस हर कोने से हटेगी। कांग्रेस का 72 साल का काम खुद अपनी गवाही दे रहा है। गरीबों के साथ गद्दारी करने वाली कांग्रेस को देश का गरीब अब पूरी तरह हटाकर ही दम लेने वाला है।
He added that in the days to come, he would not only put forward NDA's report card, but also ask the opposition why they had failed earlier. Confident of another victory, the Prime Minister said that for the first time, the country has a government that knows how to deliver. The Prime Minister also addressed a rally in Uttarakhand's Rudrapur. And joining me for a chat today to talk about some of the key issues in the lead-up to the Lok Sabha elections, Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist with me on the program, Jatin Gandhi, senior journalist as well, and Aditi Fadnis, political editor of the Business Standard. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India Votes 2019. Aditi Fadnis, I'd like to begin the program with you. The Prime Minister earlier today said that the nation has already made up its mind really as to whom it wants to go out and cast its vote for. First round of elections will be on April 11th. Do you believe that the voter is still going to take some time before he or she makes up his mind, or do you think the mind has already been made?
Well, in some cases, I think the mind has already been made up. In others, people are still mulling and turning over in their heads the alternatives that they have for whom they can vote. In places where personalities are very strong, and they have done work in their constituencies, it's a no-brainer. People are pretty clear whom they will vote for. But if you haven't done any work and your area has been in the grips of a lot of infrastructural difficulty, which is basically an MP and the state government's work, and also if the Prime Minister hasn't visited and so you don't know what he's saying, and you are not a recipient of any of the schemes that the central government has given you, then of course you will consider what your options are, and you will decide on the basis of what previous governments have done for you.
Right. Shekhar Iyer, issues like the Nyay scheme, PM Kisan that we saw earlier, such kind of schemes do you believe are going to strike a chord in the minds of the voter and are going to have some kind of an impact on this particular election or not?
No, they will have impact. I mean, one cannot rule out that this will not have an impact. But then these elections are not unidimensional. It is not that one issue will have a greater impact. I think there will be a host of issues that will play on the voters' mind. And see, Indian elections, particularly our parliamentary elections, are not, of course, we call them the general elections. But actually, they are aggregate of election happening in this 543 constituencies. So there are several factors at work. It's yes, performance of the central government, the performance of the state government, then the performance of the incumbent member of parliament, then the kind of the image and the track record of the candidates who have been set up by different parties. Then, of course, in large parts of our country, we have the caste issue, then the religious issue, then, it's a very interesting exercise, and what goes on in the voter's mind till date, despite psephology making, definitely getting more scientific, it still remains elusive for most analysts and for most people trying to find out what is called the dipstick method, okay, what exactly is the voter thinking. It's a difficult exercise, but definitely it's because ultimately the voter, when he enters the booth and presses the button on the voting machine, there are several things working on him, his own caste, his family, what does he feel about the party, and of course we have seen since 2014 the personality of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and we have seen in the last couple of years Congress President Rahul Gandhi has also been trying to make an impact. So I think there will be a host of issues that will play out.
Right. Jatin Gandhi, that having been said, let's talk about the Mission Shakti for a minute, because that was the big bang announcement that was made yesterday, putting India in a new league, really, an exclusive league. So how much of an impact is that going to have on the ground, do you think?
I don't know how big bang an announcement it was, but the fact is that the way the Prime Minister came on national television, the way he announced it, it was very clear that at least, Mr. Modi and his party want to keep security at the center of, the election campaign after Pulwama, after Balakot, and now, the ASAT. So, not sure how big it is for the common voter, but definitely it just clarifies the intent of the Prime Minister and the party that security issues are going to be central, one of the central themes in this election, which we've seen after Balakot also, and the, the to and fro between the opposition and the ruling party and the ruling alliance. So that's the clarity that comes out of that announcement yesterday.
Right. So before we move on to the next soundbite of the Prime Minister, Aditi, quick reaction on, is this going to be, and it's a Lok Sabha election at the end of the day, but is it going to be localized issues that are going to dominate, do you think, or do you think that national issues too are going to find some kind of resonance with the voters?
It's always the case that local issues do matter, and so do national issues. I was just watching a video of a election meeting shot by a local newspaper, a Hindi newspaper in Pratapgarh. Pratapgarh, the biggest issue is that there has been hardly any development. Pratapgarh, as you know, is in eastern UP. It used to be a stronghold of the Congress as long as Raja Dinesh Singh was alive. After that, it went to the BJP, and the biggest complaint of all the people who were interviewed in that video was that there is no law and order. Apparently, there was an armed robbery, and Bandhan Bank, a branch of the Bandhan Bank, was robbed, and lakhs and lakhs of rupees stolen from there. People said that our girls are not safe, that every day there's some murder, there's some dacoity, somebody's house is robbed, and all this is happening because there is no employment here. So these are all very germane things, and ultimately the local leads to the national, which is there employment or isn't there employment? And that's a very important, it's actually a central issue for our survival.
Absolutely, absolutely. Law and order, Shekhar Iyer, could be a big issue, do you think?
Yeah, it will be wherever, that law and order issue, like maybe in some constituencies it will be against, but in some places, for instance in UP, law and order is an issue that Chief Minister Yogi is talking about as one of his achievements. So we'll have to see how, because even today at Meerut, just before the Prime Minister spoke, Yogi was talking about how his government has come down with a heavy hand on crime. So we'll have to see how, where it impacts and whether it's a positive impact or a negative impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can go either way.
Yeah.
It can go either way. All right. Moving on now, talking about corruption, the Prime Minister took a dig at the opposition in Uttar Pradesh, saying that they had come together in a haphazard manner. He also said that the opposition parties had joined hands only so that they could continue with their corrupt ways.
कश्मीर से कन्याकुमारी तक वंशवाद और भ्रष्टाचार की महामिलावट करने वाले दल आज आपके इस चौकीदार से परेशान है। अपना भ्रष्टाचार जारी रखने के लिए ये सभी यहां यूपी में भी एकजुट हो गए हैं। अब सोचिए, जिस पार्टी के नेताओं को जेल भेजने के लिए बहन जी ने जीवन के 2 दशक लगा दिए, अब उसी से उन्होंने हाथ मिला लिया।
Jatin, is corruption going to be a big issue this time around?
Absolutely. Corruption was the big issue in the last election, which Mr. Modi turned into a presidential sort of contest, and there was a windfall gain for the BJP in that election. And this time around, though the BJP has been in power for the last 5 years, he's definitely, it's very certain from this speech that he's going to turn around the issue of corruption and caucus nuke at the alliances, because many of the alliance partners in several states have corruption cases. The leaders have corruption cases against them. So look at the way the BJP, the Prime Minister and the rest of the cabinet, they have turned around. Even smaller leaders of the BJP, they have turned around the Chaukidar Chor Hai campaign on its head, and everybody is prefixed Chaukidar to their names on Twitter, and so he's really the aggression that the Prime Minister is showing. He's clearly not going to let corruption charges from the opposition stick to him. Rather than he's taking the fight to their court actually.
Aditi, is corruption as big an issue as it was in the previous elections in 2014 this time around?
No, it isn't, because the only big case of a scam is the case of the Rafale purchase of the Rafale aircraft, and even there, while there may be impropriety, the money trail doesn't lead anywhere actually. So there is no overt case of corruption, and therefore the campaign is largely on past corruption and not on current corruption.
So is the opposition still looked at as someone who's been embroiled in corruption, and is the voter going to look at it that way?
Well, there will be some resonance and there will be some traction to this charge that the opposition is corrupt, and they've got hundreds of cases of corruption against them. But the question is, does the local BJP MP have any such charges against him? And that is going to be the deciding factor.
Right. Shekhar Iyer, what measures have been taken over the last 5 years really to deal with the problem of corruption, and how has it been tackled over the last 5 years?
Well, if you look at all the speeches that the Prime Minister has made, of course, today is closer to, today's speech was the first of his campaign after the election dates were announced. Earlier, he had addressed about more than 50 meetings. In all the measures that they have taken, starting with demonetization, then on to the laws that were brought in to check Benami transactions, then Fugitive Economic Offenders Bill. There were several legislative measures that have been taken, and as well as the ongoing cases that are going on, for which some prominent leaders, with the Prime Minister keep saying that many of them are out on bail. In fact, the repeated argument of BJP leaders is, you just ask Rahul Gandhi why is he on bail on the National Herald case, and or ask P. Chidambaram why is he avoiding appearing before ED and taking recourse to anticipatory bail. Constantly it's going on. Now that his son Karti Chidambaram has been given seat in Shivaganga, so there again it is becoming an issue, because that seat was kept pending. We heard that Karthik is not interested in contesting, but then we found, then Congress leader Nachiyappan gave interviews and protested, attacking the party, saying that this is one seat which is going away. Then we heard was Karthik Chidambaram trying to reach out to. So these are very much there. Now, as far as what is the corruption record of this government? Now, Modi has been saying that, look, I have managed thus far. And Rafale deal, well, the Supreme Court examined it. Aditi was mentioning that money trail is not seen. I would say there is no money trail yet. Because you need characters like Kotrochi, you need characters like Vinchadda. And the offset thing also starts after the aircraft land here. So those are things waiting to happen. One doesn't know what it will be. But definitely on the issue of corruption, you can see that opposition is on the back foot and Modi is as usual in his year. Of course, what the opposition is trying to do is trying to say, look, trying to create, there are issues, there are corruption, there are big time corruption, big ticket corruption. But still, when it comes to, because the cases against water are still going on, we just heard yesterday the buzz was Priyanka had probably made one trip to London and this Benami properties in London, and there are a lot of things are happening, and not happening too. Of course, one point that will be constantly brought against the NDA government will be, in 5 years, why you could not, send at least one person to jail. One of those big people. So this argument will continue. But I think when it comes to commitment to fight corruption, Modi's record and image still remains intact. People are not willing to believe that the Prime Minister is corrupt.
Right.
That is one of his strong points.
So, just to take off from what Shekhar Iyer just said, Aditi, he was mentioning about demonetization and how several steps have been taken really to deal with this problem of corruption. But some of these measures, do you think, have left a bad taste as far as the voter is concerned and could be a problem this time around in 2019?
Well, of course it has left a bad taste in the sense that, it's such a bad taste that they don't have jobs, they don't have any means of livelihood, and this problem continues even till today. I am not saying that, facts are saying that. But that apart, I think on the specific issue of corruption, I think this government has harassed much more than it has. It's quick to strike but afraid to wound. So it's going around filing cases, some with evidence, some without evidence. It wants to put some high profile people in jail. That seems to be the objective, not how they should go to jail and whether there is any case for them to go to jail at all.
Right.
This particularly applies to Vadra, against whom there have been 2 or 3 commissions of inquiry, and none of those commissions of inquiry have found him involved in anything illegal. So I find it very strange that they should be proceeding now on the basis of sundry people's custodial confessions, and this is a very complicated issue because custodial confessions are got under duress. People who are already in jail on serious charges like murder and so on, they will think nothing of implicating somebody else in similar cases. So it's a tricky issue, but on the face of it, the optics of it look very bad.
Okay, so, a tricky issue, Jatin. So an issue that is best left for the next government to deal with, or the law and the process should continue.
See, the fact is that in our country, the law and the process takes a very long time. If you go back in time and look at UPA 1, the corruption alleged corruption during UPA 1's time actually came out by the time it had come back to power again. So it's not as if a 5-year period is good enough to find out whether there has been corruption or not. The corruption of the private enterprise and corporate is something that this government can face flack for from the opposition. Whether it's Nirav Modi or whether it's Malia, those guys escaping and not coming back. But on the whole, old cases against opposition leaders that this government came to power on the plank of corruption in the ranks of all other parties, particularly the Congress. So it still has that advantage. The BJP still has that advantage that there are no big charges against this government so far.
No big charges on this government thus far, so it could work in favor of the Prime Minister is what Jatin Gandhi is suggesting at this point in time, because there is no real dirt on the Prime Minister. Well, moving on now, of course, the Prime Minister also listed out that the various schemes successfully launched by his government over the last 5 years. These include One Rank, One Pension, Prime Minister Kisan Yojana, Ayushman Bharat scheme and the Jan Dhan Yojana.
4 दशक से 40 साल से हमारे सैनिक 1 रैंक 1 पेंशन मांग रहे थे। उसको पूरा करने का काम भी इसी चौकीदार ने किया। देश के करीब 12 करोड़ किसान परिवारों को 75,000 करोड़ रुपए की सीधी वार्षिक मदद का काम भी इसी चौकीदार ने किया। देश के लगभग 50 करोड़ गरीब परिवारों को हर वर्ष 5 लाख रुपए तक के मुफ्त इलाज की व्यवस्था भी हमारी सरकार ने की है। देश के 34 करोड़ गरीबों के लिए जन धन योजना के तहत बैंक खाते भी हमारी सरकार ने खुलवाए हैं।
Well, several schemes have been launched by this government, Shekhar Iyer. Many of them have been successful as well. Are those schemes going to have an impact on the ground?
Well, all these schemes, particularly whether it is Jan Dhan Yojana, the gas connection, the Chula scheme and electrification. I mean, these are some of the schemes which we city folks cannot gauge. I mean, we don't even can make out that there are still so many villages that did not have electricity, where things were taken up in a very big way. In fact, particularly in states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, I understand this electrification has become a big talking point.
We saw complete electrification
And in UP it was a very piquant situation, because there was more of theft of electricity, and those who were getting electrical supply through theft, they didn't want to take a regular connection. So the state government came with a novel approach, telling these people that either you take a regular connection or we'll prosecute you for theft of electricity. I think many of them opted for regular connection. This is what I was told. So this is one thing. Then apart from that, you have a lot of schemes for the farmers, which we have seen. Of course, then in state like in UP, the sugarcane areas are another big issue. And so there have been several things, but farmers' distress is something which requires a long-term solution. Then we have seen in response to that, the Kisan thing came. So the BJP is approaching elections on the basis of what it sees as some tangible benefits to some sections of the society in different states as kind of its USP. That is why the Prime Minister keeps talking about. And today when Rahul Gandhi talks of minimum guarantee scheme through direct benefit transfer, which again BJP says this itself is a good proof that we implemented direct benefit transfer. That's why even Congress is thinking of a scheme that will be implemented to DPT, though Congress all along opposed this, including linking of Aadhaar. There was the whole number of cases that were filed in Supreme Court by Congress and its proxies preventing this. So therefore this has become a talking point. Even you are talking of income guarantee scheme using DPT, which you are not willing to give us credit. So this will go on, but then this is something I think will be decided at the level, at the village level, because gas connection did good wonders in UP assembly elections, because that was a big talking point. So, and then now there is a talk of this Ayushman Bharat. We are hearing some figures as to people who have been able to get some surgeries done. But these will have to be seen, who are the beneficiaries, who actually benefited, and how do they respond to all this?
Absolutely. Talking about the farmers, Aditi Fadnis, how much of a farm distress is there, and how is it going to, play out when it comes to the elections?
Well, there are many levels of farm distress. One of them, for instance, is whether the farmers who have paid for the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, large quantities of premium, large quantity of farmers, whether they have got anything, any insurance, whether their claims have been accepted or not. It depends from place to place. In Karnataka, for instance, when I went for the assembly election campaign, I found that the farmers were very resentful because they had paid in the Hubli Dharwar area, which is the granary of Karnataka. They had paid an amount, total amount collectively amounting to around 28 crore, and they had got back as claims only around 13 crore. So this is a problem, and it depends from place to place.
Another trend that we've seen of late is this farm loan waiver. Several states, Jatin announcing farm loan waivers and so on and so forth, but many of them have not been able to implement these farm loan waivers. Karnataka still has not been able to do that. They made the announcement a long time ago. Is that also going to play out when the voter goes out and votes?
You see, farm loan waivers being announced itself, gives you an idea that there is agrarian distress and it is widespread. That demonetization only added to this distress, the agrarian and rural distress. Now, there are good schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. I spoke to experts about this and they said by far this is the best scheme that has come out for, Fasal Bima. But the teething problems of whether it's the Fasal Bima Yojana program or whether it's, the Ayushman Bharat program, those are really something that might, affect this government because, Ayushman Bharat particularly has been launched very close to the elections. The Fasal Bima Yojana, there have been studies which say that actually it's the insurance companies which are, making windfall gains. And the disbursement, as Aditi said, to farmers who are affected is very low. Even the coverage, the way the schemes are designed, though this is the best so far, it is not really ideal. I mean, if you and I were to opt for an insurance, the kind of return we would get, in lieu of damages would be much higher than what the farmer gets. So it's really the implementation of the scheme at the ground which is going to affect the voter, not the way we discuss it in a studio or not the way the government publicizes it or experts see it, when they are examining the blueprint. It's only when it's finally implemented, what comes out of it, how the voter reacts, that is what matters.
And what's going to happen as far as development is concerned, Shekhar Iyer? Is that going to be a big plank this time around as well?
It will be because development or lack of development or no development and your development model versus my development model, these all will be talking points because every issue we are seeing is whether it is whether the ruling coalition or the opposition, this has been the talking point everywhere. In fact, we have seen leaders like Naveen Patnaik who came with their own Kalia scheme, to address this farmers' problem. Because at the heart of it all, what finally happens is how the voter looks at, how his life is changing and if at all it has changed. Is it for the bad or is it for the worse? And given the levels of poverty we have across this country, and there are different levels because the situation in Rajasthan may not be the same as in Tamil Nadu, or situation in Punjab may not be the same as, say, Madhya Pradesh. So, given this kind of topography and the kind of demography you have, the results are varying, the impact is also varying. But everybody swears by Vikas, everybody swears by, development mantra. Now, but it remains to be seen that how much is any party able to convey to the voter the sincerity about its implementing. Whether is it sincere or is it paying lip service. And when any party does this, they will have to face critics and criticism that yours is only a lip service, yours is only a tall claim. So that will be weighed against what has happened on the ground. Because the voter is not going to go by, what people are saying. He is going to see what did happen. Did fertilizer shortage end? Did he get the kind of inputs he needed? Say in the case of farmer. Or what about the water? Because water is another big issue in terms of irrigation. And then the housing. Housing is another issue where we have seen that the government came with this housing for all for 2022. And that is something which the PM has been pushing, to see that there are some tangible results, at least in some of the most backward districts.
Right. And as on the economic front, Aditi Fadnis, we've been a bright spot really. China has been slowing down. There are reports coming out of the United States where the United States may be going into recession. Europe has been struggling for a long time now. Germany's economy in the previous quarter, we saw it contracting. So is that going to play out on the minds of the voters, or do you think that it's only something that's going to be limited to us city folks?
Well, it's going to have a direct impact on the lives of voters in a global world. And frankly, recession in the West should be no cause of satisfaction for India. because our exports then will suffer, and there will be there will be a competition between the rupee and the dollar, and investments will be limited, and so on and so forth. So it's not a matter of any great satisfaction. The world economy and even the commodities markets have been crashing, and our exports, particularly of, I mean, that's one of the reasons why there is so much widespread farmer distress, whether it's kisan farmers, whether it's sugar farmers, or it is soybean farmers. World prices are coming down, and sugar factories are unable to export the sugar, so they don't want to process the sugarcane anymore. So farmers have these stocks of sugarcane, they don't know what to do with it. Similarly pulses, similarly soybean. So these are complex issues, and I think in terms of manufacturing, there's hardly any movement on manufacturing. We are repeatedly seeing that the tax shortfall, tax collection levels have not met their target. I'm sure the government has an answer for all this, but at the moment, all this will have an impact on the lives of people living wherever they are living. And they may not feel it immediately, but they will feel it. And in the next government, I really don't know how they are going to match, I mean, how they are going to balance their books, because we have spent and spent and spent. So I don't know what the real fiscal deficit figures are, and whether we can make them up as we.
Before I slip into a short break, Jatin, a quick reaction on the GST, because you've seen a lot of consolidation happen really as far as the tax rates and all of that are concerned. The government and everyone else, economists and everyone said that it was going to be work in progress, and a lot of progress has been made as far as the GST is concerned. Is that going to trickle down to the water?
You see, the thing with the case of GST also is that, it took a long time to, the various players took a long time to come around. So by the time it's been implemented, definitely the teething problems of GST are going to be seen as shortcomings of the government in implementation. So whether or not the voter, I mean, it's the classes which are affected by GST, there is a good chance that they are going to hold it against the government. But it's really the large political narrative that the ruling coalition builds, which will decide whether this becomes an issue for the election or not.
Right. All right. On that note, then we'll slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll take a look at what kind of an impact will national security issues have on the upcoming election. Stay tuned.
Watch In Depth with me, Tina Jha, at 6 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, the Prime Minister also talked about his government's vision of a new India, while also saying that there was a strong focus on national security.
हमारा विजन नए भारत का है, ऐसे भारत का जो अपने गौरवशाली अतीत के अनुरूप ही वैभवशाली होगा। एक ऐसा नया भारत जिसकी नई पहचान होगी, जहां सुरक्षा, समृद्धि और सम्मान के संस्कार होंगे। सुरक्षा देश के दुश्मनों से, सुरक्षा आतंकवाद से, सुरक्षा गुंडागर्दी से, सुरक्षा भ्रष्टाचारियों से, सुरक्षा बीमारी से, समृद्धि साधनों और संसाधनों की, समृद्धि ज्ञान और विज्ञान की, समृद्धि संस्कृति और विचार की, समृद्धि हमारे आचार और व्यवहार की।
Well, the Prime Minister also hit out at the opposition and previous governments for what he said was their lack of seriousness towards national security. He talked about the delays in defense procurement.
कुछ लोगों ने कैसे सरकारें चलाई हैं, कैसे देश के सुरक्षा हितों से खिलवाड़ किया है। हमारी वायुसेना नया लड़ाकू विमान मांग रही थी, उनकी सरकार फैसले टालती रही। विमान हादसे होते रहे, उनकी सरकार फैसले को टालती रही। हमारे जवान बुलेट प्रूफ जैकेट मांग रहे थे, उनकी सरकार इस फैसले को भी टालती रही। आतंकी हमले में, नक्सली हमलों में हमारे जवान शहीद होते रहे, उनकी सरकार फैसले को टालती रही। हमारे वैज्ञानिक अंतरिक्ष में सैटेलाइट को मार गिराने की परीक्षण की मांग कर रहे थे, उनकी सरकार ने ये फैसला भी टाल दिया।
All right, now I'm going to continue my discussion in the studio right now. Shekhar Iyer, what is the Prime Minister's vision and idea of a new India?
Well, we heard from the Red Fort, if you remember last year, about several dimensions of New India, where he spoke of starting from food for all to housing for all to jobs for all, and there were several dimensions of it which he has been talking. And today we saw his outlining the definition of national security, because he just did not speak about in terms of security. National security, as we understand, is about the borders and terrorism. But today he extended a bit more to the internal security, and internal security in terms of the normal law and order which you face. Because he talked about security from Gundagardi, because Yogi has been claiming that he has been, after he took over, there is a crackdown on all this lawlessness which are seen as a legacy of previous governments. Now, in terms of, when you talk of New India, it is also about the aspirational India, which the Prime Minister feels that he has been able to often bring it to the fore, and which he thinks is what will attract the new young Indian voters, who are every election adding by almost more than 1 crore. So this is about the aspirational India. And the aspirational India is about better connectivity, better quality life, better health facilities, better educational facilities. So it's something, it's a dream which every politician would like to sell. And in 2004, if you recall, many BJP leaders have confessed that one mistake they made about the Shining India was they went to the people thinking that people would vote on the basis of what the Vajpayee government had achieved in terms of the reforms it had brought, in terms of that improvement in what they thought was But then you don't get votes for what you have done, because no party has ever come back to power or what it done. Yes, what it has done does give an indication, but you will have to show something for the future. That is because we are all looking for something for future. That is where the Prime Minister Modi's campaign is seen as more aggressive, more imaginative. And it's not just limited to welfare economics or the welfareism, if I may use, which is the thrust of the Congress campaign, because they feel this is what gave them result in 2004, it gave them result in 2009. So they are still in that phase of where they still talk about welfareism. But the BJP feels India has moved ahead. Yes, you need to take care of the very poor, and it must be directed at them, the people who really need it. But at the same time, a lot of the government energy and resources should also be towards creating resources and creating infrastructure that is in harmony with the aspirational India.
Right. So, Aditi Fadnavis, that having been said, what is the idea of a new India as far as the common man is concerned? And what are the aspirations really of a new India?
the state has a place in society, and and ordinary people would like institutions of the state to function without corruption, without having to pay for it, and would like them to be efficient. That's number one, I think, the most important thing. You can do anything you want. You can be your own, you can, with your own two hands, build a house, you can get water, you can run around, get electricity, but you can't, if somebody draws you into litigation, you can't fight a case on your own. You need the state to help you. And those kind of reforms, I think, are very important, and that's what people are looking forward to. That things become more efficient, that wherever the state touches their lives, it's not a bane, but kind of something that you don't have to endure, but something that you can take for granted. Why do people, Indians particularly, why are they so rule abiding when they go to a foreign country like the United States or the UK, but so lax in their rules in observing ordinary civic rules when they are in India? Because they feel that the state won't give them anything, so they should have no respect for the state. Now, that's a very complex issue, and I think the relationship between society and state and the individual and the state is something that all governments have to think about.
Right.
The Modi government has been thinking about it, but I don't think it has reached any turning point. This is something that they'll have to consider very deeply if they come to power a second time.
All right. And Jatin, as far as national security is concerned, Pulwama, Balakot, and so on and so forth, how much of an impact is it going to have on the voter?
See, we've always known that the BJP, national security, borders, Pakistan, terrorism, these are issues which have been very close to the BJP's heart. But the way Prime Minister spoke about security today, he just did not limit security to national security or terror. He's talking about security against corruption, against disease, against law and order, gundagardi, as Shekhar sir mentioned. So he's also pandering to the aspirational classes, the aspirations of the common man. And we are a young country. The electorate, majority of the electorate was born after 1991. So this is a post-liberalization generation. So the aspirations are much higher. The way, we've seen polls being contested, promises being made, a lot of doles are given out, a lot of doles are promised. So the expectations of the people from the state, from the government, are far more than what they used to be, say a quarter of a century ago. So national security is something that you can drum up support on, but people ultimately also look for what is there for them in it. So that's why he's expanded the security definition to include disease, law and order, corruption, so on and so forth.
And before I slip into another break, Shekhar Iyer, defense procurement is something that the Prime Minister spoke about as well. That has been abysmal really over the years. We've seen that hardly any defense procurement has indeed taken place. So, but is that really going to strike a chord as far as the voter is concerned?
Well, in sections, particularly the defense forces themselves, the servicemen and their families, and also among, particularly in cities where people, after what we have seen in Jammu and Kashmir, then this incidents like Pulwama, and then the government's response to it, and the need for our defense to be top-notch, because that is how you deal, or even the standoff in Doklam, for instance. Because these are the situations where really, everybody is concerned as to what kind of resources can we spare. Because after all, we are not a country of resources to spend so much on defense. But nevertheless, the situation in the neighborhood is such that you cannot ignore this area. Of course, I think because of the experiences they had with the Bofors, probably the UPA government went through a period where either the defense minister, the then A.K. Antony, was too careful, or there were other issues because one does not know what exactly happened, but definitely decision making in terms of the pressing requirements. We have just seen the Rafale deal. We needed a medium range fighter aircraft, a modern aircraft, but then it took more than 10 years. and then it is still about, this aircraft or that aircraft, then why have we chosen this aircraft? This is how the debate has been going on. So, and similarly, even equipping our army with the latest assault weapons. We have just seen orders have been given for getting those American latest guns for our soldiers. So these are small issues, or even bulletproof vests, because we have seen NDA government came in and took some decision in this regard. So there are several issues. So this is also plays on the mind, because one of the talking points in the election is which government would be better equipped to deal with these situations, this one or the previous one. So this is another debate during the elections.
Right. Right. All right. We'll slip into another short break on the program. In our last segment, we'll take a close look at Uttar Pradesh and what are the issues on the ground there. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Watch The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira, at 6:30 p.m. Well, let's now shift focus to politics of Uttar Pradesh, where Priyanka Gandhi on Wednesday said that she would contest the elections if her party asks her to. But she says that her own wish is to work for the party's organization. The Congress is fighting alone in the state after efforts to form an alliance with the SP and BSP fell through. In fact, BSP chief Mayawati has been vocal in her opposition to the Congress party in the past weeks, also saying there was no question of fighting alongside the Congress in any state. The BSP and SP are fighting together with the RLD in Uttar Pradesh. All right, then continuing our discussion here in the studio with our panel, let's talk about Uttar Pradesh now. Aditi Fadnis, what are the key big issues on the ground really on Uttar Pradesh?
Well, there are so many issues, and they all differ from constituency to constituency, so it's very hard to say what. But certainly the Prime Minister's personality is an overriding factor. So is the Yogi government's, the Yogi Adityanath government's record in law and order, and the feeling that among the lowest castes, the Dalits for instance, that this government has it out for them. So, in many areas of Uttar Pradesh, it's lack of development. In some areas of Uttar Pradesh, it is fantastic development, largely on the back of roads and national highways. In other areas of Uttar Pradesh, it is law and order and so on.
Right. Jatin, there was much talk, of course. Now the alliance, Congress is not part of that Mahagathbandhan, but Congress was initially supposed to be part of that. But the alliance ultimately did not work out. So, it's going to be a three-way contest really in Uttar Pradesh between the alliance of BSP and SP and then the BJP and the Congress. Whom is such kind of an arrangement going to help really?
I think first of all,
a three-cornered contest.
First of all, the Congress made a mistake by not aggressively pursuing, entering the alliance, because it is actually the Congress which is going to be affected the most and probably end up with the least number of seats, though one cannot guess which way votes will go. The other thing is that they brought in Priyanka Gandhi from Eastern UP, where Mr. Modi's, shifted base last time, and he created a sort of euphoria among the UP voter, and then they ended up with 73 out of 80 seats. But even Priyanka, for that matter, one the Congress did not aggressively pursue entering the alliance. Second, Priyanka's launch itself has been a bit of a whimper. It's been more than 2 months since, and 23rd January she became the General Secretary. So she's sounding equally reluctant that as Rahul used to when he came into politics, that I will contest if my party wants, but I would rather work on the organization. Today she's spoken to party workers in Amethi and said, prepare for 2022. Now, just 15 days before an election, you do not start talking about the next election. So clearly, the Congress has lost the plot somewhere in UP, in my opinion, and it's going to be the, it's actually going to probably wean away some votes from the SP, BSP, RLD alliance, and perhaps benefit the BJP. But whether the arithmetic of even the Congress leaving the alliance or not being able to enter the alliance is going to be good enough for BJP, I don't know.
Okay. Shekhar Iyer, that having been said, what is it that's is caste going to trump everything else in Uttar Pradesh? And is it going to be a case of pure arithmetic?
Well, this time this alliance that has come about between the Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party, largely because of efforts of Akhilesh Yadav and Mayawati, everybody is looking at how this is alliance going to play out, particularly in terms of how it brings together the votes of minorities, Dalits, Yadavs, and with RLD in it, the Jat factor, particularly in the western UP. So everybody is looking at it. Well, this social alliance of sorts, will the political alliance between these two leaders actually trigger a larger social alliance? If it does, it will completely rewrite the politics of Uttar Pradesh. So that's a big thing. And for the Congress, of course, the Congress has choices. It could have accepted a very junior role in the alliance, even after the two parties decided not to include Congress, or they had to look at the future. And the best way they thought could be to somehow revive their own organization all over UP. I think they pitched for the second thing because that is the only way they could keep, revive the organization at the grassroots level. Because Congress party at one time, there was not a single village in Uttar Pradesh which did not have a Congress office. Now, over the years, in starting with one alliance which everybody with the Congress blames is the alliance they had with Mayawati in 96. That cost heavily for the Congress. Of course, Mayawati also did not appreciate Congress. She said, our Dalits votes went to Congress, but we didn't get the upper caste votes. So, for the Congress, I think the choice is very limited because they have to work back at the constituency, and they feel that ultimately, if they can show that staying power instead of rushing for short-term alliances, perhaps there is a possibility that the party will ultimately revive. Because no congressman worth his salt or her salt can ever think of having a future for the party purely on the basis of alliances, because every party wins to win as many number of seats as possible and then look at coming to power. And even in power, the bargaining is purely on the basis of arithmetic, no matter what is your chemistry among the leaders.
Right. So, closing comments now from all my guests, starting first with you, Aditi Fadnis, is the transfer of votes really between the Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party. Do you see that really happening on the ground?
It's very hard to say. On the face of it, no, I don't. But we don't know what the realities are, and in different places, I think the outcome may be different.
Right. Jatin Gandhi, how much of an impact are faces going to make in Uttar Pradesh?
Since it's, we are seeing now a multi-cornered contest, so obviously faces is going to be a factor. The arithmetic definitely is there. And talking about transfer of votes, BSP does have a track record of being able to, transfer a large part of its votes to its allies, but whether the SP vote will transfer to the BSP is a big question that we will get to know the answer of on May 23rd.
And talking about the Samajwadi Party, all is not well within the Samajwadi Party itself, Shekhar Iyer. I mean, they are, the family itself is battling several internal battles.
True, they are fighting several internal battles, but I can tell you one thing. Uttar Pradesh is one state, at least we are seeing this time, no party is very confident. I mean, everybody is having their back to the wall and trying to see how they can work it out. Should they change candidates? Should they repeat candidates? Should they make state ministers as candidates? Or, as you mentioned, Samajwadi Party, I think everybody, whoever is capable of contesting elections in the Mulayam Singh Yadav family is out in the fray. So I think this is one of the very difficult elections when it comes to all the parties, and at stake is 80 of the 543 Lok Sabha seats. So you can see how the parties are literally sweating it out.
In such kind of an arrangement, Aditi Fadnis, do you believe that the rebels are going to play a crucial role? in an election like this?
Well, rebels always have a role to play, but typically only in areas where there is an sort of division between the ruling party and the person facing him. In a narrow margin, a rebel has a maximum chance of playing mischief. In a large margin, in an election which is marked by a wave, there is no place for rebels.
All right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of India Votes 2019. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.